Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. This week featured Arsenal's home match against Luton Town, and then a match at Amex Stadium against Brighton and Hove Albion. What's a Hove Albion? Keith, help me out here.
Are we leading with questions already? I was about to see. I was all set for an eclipse joke.
Go for it.
Well, no, I was just about to say, I hope you got to see something today. Here where I was, the sun was eclipsed by all of the rain clouds that we got. It rained all day, so we saw nothing. We saw absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Yeah. Is it darker out? Yes, because it's raining. because the clouds have covered everything. So
it was fairly cloudy here, and I had my glasses. My son and I were trying to watch. Like, we weren't in the totality area, but we were able to see something most of the time. There was a period where the clouds completely blocked it enough that you could see like a bright glare with the naked eye, but with the solar eclipse glasses on, you didn't see anything at all. But most of the time we saw something. It was kind of like watching the crescent kind of shift from like a rightward facing crescent to kind of slowly an upward facing crescent, and I lost interest and didn't get to see it become a backward C. So
yeah, we got none of that. We didn't even get the sun just in general today. I actually was in San Antonio this weekend, which did get full blanking what the word was. We got full
totality,
coverage. Totality. That was it. And there were a lot of people coming into town that weekend and staying through today. Whereas Houston, we were supposed to only get. They were talking about up to like 94%. So we were supposed to get a fair amount. And I know some people were driving out to the countryside where it was much closer to totality, but I don't know how that went. So I did not. I did actually see the sun completely eclipsed today by cloud cover. So I don't know if that counts, but
better luck next time in a few decades.
Yeah, I have a few more eclipse jokes later, mostly about Liverpool, but we'll get to that.
So yeah, this was an interesting week for multiple reasons. For me, I found out that I goofed big time with our soccer registration for youth soccer for my son. So, I'm in charge. I am the person in charge of setting up registration and helping with registration questions for baseball. And that has taken more time this year than ever before. Especially we had winter clinics that we were running that I was helping out with, like the registration for, and the clinics themselves, all kinds of stuff like that. And apparently, if you'd asked me 1 week ago today, I would have said, yeah, we're all set, waiting to get word for when the season is starting. But then the woman who I was going to be coaching with, she was saying, oh, hey, did you get the schedule? It looks like the games are Saturday mornings. I was like, oh, that's weird. I didn't get that email. I wonder what happened. And I meant to follow up, and I didn't. And that was a couple weeks ago. And then a week ago, she's telling me, oh, that's weird. They didn't put me on your team. And I was like, oh, what? I missed another email? And that's when it started to dawn on me. Uh-oh. Did I completely forgot to register. So, and the deadline is like January 31st. I mean, it's like, it was over a long time ago at this point. They close it super early and still put everything together at the very last minute. Like at baseball, we put everything together at the last minute, but we allow you to register like almost that whole time. We put a late fee in at some point, but anyways, so yeah, so my son will be playing. He's on a team that I think already had like 12 kids, I think, which is a lot. And he's going to be the 13th, given that they only put 5 at a time on the field.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be assistant coaching, which is not what I'd prefer to be doing, but better than no involvement at all. It was severely disappointing. I was crushed when I found that out, because all I've been thinking about the last like 5 months is, since it ended in the fall, is what am I going to be doing differently? Like all the ideas that I've had, I'll have to put on hold for a while. Hopefully the coach lets me have input too, but up to him.
I remember that. I remember having some instances in the youth level where you had the coach who was the person nominally in charge, but then one of the assistants didn't have the time necessarily to deal with all the paperwork or whatever that comes with being the point of contact, but actually knew the game, and so was the one who generally led practice, or was always suggesting drills and stuff. So it really just depends on who your head man is, or woman. Head woman, perhaps, whoever that is, but unless they've got a full thought out plan, usually at that level, some dads are always open to suggestions. So,
oh, yeah, I hope so. So we'll see. Hopefully, I don't remember who this person is. I'll probably recognize him who I'm assisting, but we'll see. It's starting. First practice is 1 week from tomorrow as we record, so we're pretty close to the season starting. So before we get to the show proper, just a little announcement for anyone watching on YouTube, and if you haven't watched on YouTube before, please try it. I think you might like it. We added something in the last couple weeks. A couple things. We added chapter markers, so it's easy to hop around between the different parts of the show. They're not super granular, but so for instance, right now we're in what I would call the introduction, the opening banter of the show. We then move into typically follow-up, and then news, sometimes an MLS update if it's long enough to mark as such, then one or more matches, the sponsor break. If you've already bought all the products from all of our sponsors and supported us in that way, feel free to skip the sponsor in that case. And then, we'll have our dessert topic at the end and the outro. So that's all broken down so you can see, you can jump around. If there's a part that you want to listen to again, make it easier to find it in the 1 hour-ish runtime of the show. I also put together some playlists, just kind of chopping up this season, and I'll do it for seasons going forward, across the different competitions that Arsenal is in. So there's the season 2 playlist is what I've been building up this whole time, where it's the whole 23-24 season of our show. But then you can listen or view the Arsenal episodes that are talking about the Premier League competitions or the Champions League or the Cup competitions. The Cup competitions one is obviously our shortest playlist there. And, obviously if there's different matches going on, then it'll be listed in multiple places. But so any fans of, let's say, just the Champions League who want to see our take on Arsenal in the Champions League, feel free to keep an eye open for those episodes. There'll be one getting posted next week. So looking forward to that. But as far as follow-up, one thing I meant to ask you about on the last episode, you had mentioned something about cynical fouls, which I'm familiar with pretty well at this point. But you also mentioned rotational fouls, and that's something I haven't heard of before. I didn't know what you meant. Okay.
So, watch Bukayo Saka. That's rotational fouling. What I mean generally by that is, as we've talked about, you can receive a yellow card for accumulation. That is not just fouling, not just a particularly bad foul, but also a persistent infringement, as what the wording is. And usually you can tell when this happens because you see a foul and you're like, oh, that wasn't that much of a foul. And the referee comes over and is like, starts counting his fingers. And the point is, you're not getting a yellow for that tackle. You're getting yellow for all of those tackles together. Like, you have gone too far. You've been warned. Or sometimes you'll see them talk to him after a tackle and think, oh, that wasn't that bad. And the answer is, you do it again, and I'm pulling the card out. One of the ways teams get around that is what they call rotational fouling, so that it's someone fouls Saka, and then the next time down, someone else will foul him, and then someone else will foul him, and so that no one is accumulating that many fouls. Instead, it's just everyone gets 1 or 2 shots.
Oh, okay.
Now, so you're rotating who's committing the fouls. Now,
right.
Having said that, referees are theoretically at least told to watch that. And you will see instances, and I know, complain about the officials, we will see instances of the referee, again, giving a yellow and thinking that wasn't a bad foul, but the referee's consciously sort of saying it was you and you, they know, theoretically they're watching what's going on. And to their defense, sometimes it is hard. We're obviously watching the game in a very particular way. The officials are watching it in a very different way. And so it essentially is persistently fouling one person. As opposed to one person persistently fouling.
Okay, that's an interesting way to look at that. Okay, got it.
And then as we talk about the cynical ones, they're just, remember, was it a couple weeks ago, Kai Havertz pushed the guy over?
Right. Yeah.
We all know what that was.
Right, exactly, yep. And which, we also talked about when we watched Next Goal Wins and talked about that a few weeks back. There was a major cynical foul there, and they played it up in the movie like, how could you do that? But we know it's part of the game. It's just how it's played. So yeah, got that.
And sometimes you'll see those that are obvious. I think the one that occurs to me, it's not a foul in the same way it was the 2010 World Cup. Uruguay was deep in extra time against, I think it was Ghana. and the ball came in, and Luis Suarez, currently of Inter Miami, punches the ball out of the net. Now, Suarez is, just so we're clear, a forward.
Right.
He is not a keeper. Right. He's not supposed to. And I mean, the way he did it to deny a goal like that, that's a red. An obvious denial of a obvious goal scoring opportunity. Clearly was done on purpose. It's thrown out of the game. Now, Ghana missed the ensuing penalty and then proceeded to lose in a shootout. Mm-hmm. And, yes, that is the most cynical of cynical things. The obvious answer is, well, it worked.
Well, yeah.
I mean, and when you're in a position like Suarez, it was deep in extra time. I mean, if they had conceded the goal, that's probably they probably lose, and that was a knockout out of the World Cup. So, like, I understand people are mad at that, and there are a lot of things for people to be mad at Luis Suarez about over his career, mostly biting people, which is not a joke. He's done that multiple times.
Have not heard about that before.
Oh, okay. look that one up. Luis Suarez bites people.
The Muhammad Ali of the soccer world, or not?
No, I believe
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson
Crossing by boxers.
Yeah. Ali did a lot of things. Never did that. But yeah. So there is a deep, and so Suarez is already a bit of a villain figure, and it's like, and as someone who recognizes Suarez as the villain, I have zero problem with that. I understand exactly what he did, and frankly, that's on Ghana for not sinking the penalty and then basically losing it in the shootout. That's on them.
Mm-hmm. Well, he paid the penalty. Like, it's not like they didn't call him on it. It's a calculated risk.
Yep.
Playing short-sighted could have worked against them, but it's like I just watched Top Gun yesterday again. It's like they tell Maverick in that movie. It's like, well, look, what you did was wrong by the textbook, right? The referee gave you a red card for it, but it's kind of genius.
It worked. The shot was there.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, one other thing, we kind of got on a tangent a little bit last week with the benches back. Got us talking about Elton John. You were talking about him owning Watford. Were you able to find out if that's still the case?
So he was at one point the owner of the club. He is a lifelong fan. Right. Of the club, and he was the chairman and director from the mid 70s to the late 80s, and then again in the late 90s. He is currently the honorary life president.
Okay.
So he doesn't really. I mean, he goes, and one of their stands is the Elton John stand. He is a Watford super fan without question.
Right.
It's his boyhood team, and He maintains that connection to the club, which is cool,
And, definitely.
We've talked in the past about celebrity fans, and a club like Arsenal has a lot of celebrity fans.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, when you're English, you have a hometown club, and
sure,
and in his case, it was Watford, and it's kind of cool that he stays around with them, and they are having a decent season. They've been in the Premier League. I have seen them play a number of years in the Premier League. They're currently in the Championship.
So not an obscure club. I hadn't really heard of them yet, but not too far down the pyramid. Okay.
No, they are not. Yeah, they're in the Championship currently. They're currently 14th, so they're nowhere really close to promotion. But had a couple runs in the Premier League in recent memory. So.
All right. One other thing that I thought was really interesting. So I have not touched my fantasy Premier League roster in months, if ever, since I originally set it up. Yeah, you talked about that. You told me that's what would happen. But I still get the emails, and it's interesting. I kind of just scan through the emails when they come in once a week. And there's one thing that I picked out that was very entertaining. So they give you 3 categories of players. They give you most selected, most captained, because I think captain's points count double or something like that, and then most benched. And I see, Saka was most selected this week, and I see most captain, and I see under most benched also Saka. I wonder how common that is to be both the most selected and the most benched. And it was probably just question marks over his injury, whether he would actually end up playing or not, factoring in, I guess. But
or also a lot of people like yourself who haven't played in a while and decided he wasn't the choice for that week and just haven't looked since whatever week last.
Yeah,
it's probably
true.
I mean, what it suggests is he's a player who a lot of people have on their team. That's really what it probably stems from.
Yeah. So what is going on with Everton? I heard there was more news this week.
Yes, I had heard that was supposed to come down this week. We've talked about this in the past. Apparently, it came down earlier today. Everton has been once again deducted points. They lost 6 of them, 6 points earlier in the season. They were at an additional 2 points, and so they are 8 points. They are now 8 points subtracted from their total on the season, which means Everton is currently now 27 points. They're just 2 points ahead of Luton out of the relegation zone, but have a game in hand.
Okay,
I suspect Everton will survive. They're actually not they're not a bad club. I mean, if you were to add those 8 points, they would be obviously very clear. They'd be in 14th. They'd be clear and a point behind Fulham for 13th, and just a couple points behind Bournemouth in 12th. So they'd be a solid mid-table team.
Yeah,
they're nothing special, but they're certainly not bad.
So they should manage to survive all this.
I think they'll be okay in the long run. And they're a little put out in general because of what it represents as far as their standing, and obviously the money they get for their standing in the league, and the fact that they sort of feel they're being a bit unfairly singled out in terms of punishment for financial irregularities, where perhaps certain other clubs, City, are not facing any sort of penalties. So a little hard done by, but I fully expect Everton to survive and be a Premier League team once again next season.
Okay. If we want to have, I guess you could call it a brief MLS update. There's something that I forgot to put on the show document for last week, so I completely forgot to mention it. But so as someone who has a launch day Apple Vision Pro, and I've been enthusiastic about it, we talked about it early on as something that's really exciting for sports. And all that we had before last week was just, 5 seconds of footage in one of their clip montages of what to expect from immersive video, right? And immersive video is one of the really compelling use cases for this device, where you feel like you're sitting in whatever environment what you're watching is, whether it's in the rehearsal room, studio with Alicia Keys, or underwater with sharks swimming at you, or even they have these dinosaur ones that take you back, and those are made by Jon Favreau. But what they released this past week was what they announced a few weeks prior, which was it turns out to only be 5 minutes, but a 5-minute highlight reel of the MLS Cup from last year. So this was 5 minutes of soccer in an immersive experience. It was very, very interesting to watch. I'm really, my appetite is thoroughly whetted for more of this going forward. I hope that they integrate it in some meaningful way to the ongoing MLS season. But so there's some interesting things, and a lot of the commentary I've been hearing from the Apple point of view rather than from the soccer fan point of view. But one thing that a lot of people have talked about, which I experienced also, you shift points of view, right? And because it's a 5-minute package, the cuts are fairly frequent, and I imagine that it wouldn't be as much when you're watching an actual match and you're cutting between different events. You're not always focused on the same game. It made it tough to follow. There'd be times where they'd cut, and I'm looking all around, where's the ball? There were times where I couldn't find it, where they shift from a behind the goal perspective to all of a sudden you're on the sideline, and you just can't find it. And it was a little disorienting. But what I will say in its favor, and this is really remarkable to me. So I've been watching soccer, give or take, every week. If you average it out, it's been at least every week for the past year and a half, right? Mm-hmm. The night following watching that 5-minute clip reel was the first time I had a soccer dream where I was playing professional soccer in some degree, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds funny. I don't mean it as a joke, though. There is something about the immersive aspect of it that is really incredible. Being able to look wherever you want. They took you into the locker room where they're spraying champagne all over the place, and you're seeing the celebration after it was Cleveland won, right?
Columbus.
I knew it was Ohio. That's close. I'll give myself partial credit for that one. But
don't tell that to anyone from Ohio.
Yeah, no kidding. So That was really cool. One quick thing I wanted to ask. Oh, by the way, I'm very glad that we've talked about MLS before, because there was like 10 seconds dedicated to the unfurling of the "Hell is Real" banner in this stand. So I was not completely perplexed by that. I was laughing. But so let me ask you, in the locker room, though, they're showing the champagne popping, all that. A bunch of players were wearing these massive visors, goggles that were Adidas branded. And I know Adidas is the equipment provider for the whole league, so the fact that there was Adidas stuff in the locker room wasn't surprising. But I'm wondering, and I don't even know if you know what those are and what they're intended for. I don't know if they are ski goggles or something that are being put to this use, or if Adidas is just like, look, we know that players are going to want to keep champagne out of their eyes when they're celebrating, and they may as well be advertising us at the same time, and if they make goggles for that purpose.
Yeah, so increasingly that has become a thing of players, because you'll see this in pretty much every other American sport, probably I guess in European ones too. They win the title, they go a championship, they go back to the locker room, and champagne's being sprayed everywhere. And eventually, in the last few years, guys have started wearing goggles because champagne hurts when it gets in your eyes.
Well, yeah, of course.
And so they've started wearing goggles, and I'm sure at some point Adidas said, "Well, we make goggles." Like, hey, why not wear? I mean, so that point it really becomes. I mean, for all I know, they have they talk about having like a big bucket full of the champagne on ice. I mean, you figure there's only one of those because only one team's going to win. Adidas may just have a big bucket of goggles too, and whoever wins, they roll that into their locker room. They roll the tarps down in the locker, say, "All right, boys, go for it."
I noticed the tarps too. Yeah.
Oh yes, that's all. I mean, that's they've been doing that for a long time. The tarps, the champagne, and all of that. So that's been a cherished. So that's been a thing that's been ongoing for some time, and the goggles are a relatively recent development, right? And once they started doing it, it was just a question of when it was going to get branded equipment, really.
Right. So overall, it's something I'm the perspective changing is something they will need to solve. Hopefully they have a strategy in mind for when there is some kind of full game coverage, which I think is inevitable. I don't know how long we'll have to wait, but at some point they will have that. And even as they get better at editing together highlight reels, hopefully they're able to take that into account more and either have a fixed perspective the whole time or something. I don't know. Or something, just like make the cuts smoother in some way. We'll see how that develops. But that's the kind of thing. Hopefully, we talked about the DRM stripping that they do, where they have their own like pirated copies of stuff for people to watch in the Apple Store for demos. Hopefully, they have that available like that sometime soon for people to watch, because it's free and fairly easy to set up a demo, and you take as much time as you want in the Apple Store, and they show you stuff. That's something that a lot of people would probably get something out of, and it's something that hopefully will be a bigger part of the platform. So let's travel to the Emirates and talk about the Luton Town match. So this was April 3rd this past week. This is our 30th match in the Premier League, and we ended up winning 2-0. We maintained our streak of clean sheets, which it sounds like we're matching a recent record for, I think, away clean sheets. They were talking about at Brighton. I think we had like 5 away clean sheets, and that was our longest streak or something. That was set. It was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago during one of those seasons or something.
I admit I hadn't heard of that.
I don't remember. Yeah.
But I mean, it sounds plausible. We are the best defense in the league.
I didn't even think about it until now, but I mean, Raya's got to be up for the Golden Glove at this point,
he is, right? I think the favorite, as I understand, I think we talked about this last year. It's the number of clean sheets is actually get it.
We've had a lot this year. Last year we didn't, but this year we really have.
I think he is actually in the pole position, if you will. That one. I'm sure we'll look that up as we go along. This was always a potentially an interesting game coming, obviously, after the City game. There's, of course, the build-up and the emotion, and then, of course, the game itself, which was physically and emotionally exhausting. You saw the players collapsing, like we were collapsing in the pub, just like, oh, my God. And then you have to turn it around. Now, in some way, we have the big benefit, of course, of playing Luton, who's very likely to go down. They're not very good.
Right.
They deserve a lot of credit. They've come out and decided to play their style. They've been They've been a tricky fixture for some teams, including us. You saw we needed the late Declan Rice winner to beat them at Kenilworth Road. So this was always potentially the kind of game where we needed to be mentally sharp, which was, I think, where there's a lot of danger. And there were 5 changes made to the lineup the first one, including a start by Emil Smith Rowe, who, we'll talk about players of the week and all that later. I thought, from what I saw and a lot of the commentary afterwards, he had an excellent game. Smith Rowe did.
Played almost 90 minutes. He was substituted very late in the second half. So, yeah.
But Smith Rowe came on. We saw more Zinchenko. I think Tomiyasu was on.
Reece Nelson started.
And you could see at moments that we were a bit ragged. That the sense of all that rotation. One of the big benefits we've had is, even though we've talked about a lot of the injuries we've had, not that it's good that they're long-term injuries, but because they tend to be longer-term injuries, it gives the guys who are playing a lot of time to stay in positions and develop those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw some of the lack of that today. In this game, there were points at which things just weren't quite fitting together. And that being said, we were completely dominant.
Well, yeah.
Having the home game right after the City match, I think, was a big help. And I just think, in the sense we were very much in control of this one. A little profligate early on, in terms of, some of our attempts on goal. Some credit to them for defending well. But when it finally happened, And
the dam broke a little bit.
And Odegaard puts it in, it's 1-0. And and then you get the second goal, which is big. At 1-0, there's always a concern about being beaten on the counter, and you're walking the knife edge a little bit. Even though there was a great sense of control in this game and how well we played and how we were dominating Luton to that point, even with, as we mentioned, the raggedness. But then you get the second goal right before the half, and you don't want to say the game's over at that stage. But against a club like Luton, to score twice at Arsenal is asking a lot. And, look, ultimately, it's the defender who knocks it in. It is an own goal. But Reece Nelson creates that goal with the run. And he's a guy that, he's kind of found his level a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is who he is for us.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a guy who leaves over the summer and finds a place where he will be able to play regularly. He is kind of at this stage of his career where he rightfully you would think that he should be playing regularly to make the most of you only get one career, right? And he's just not going to get that regular playing time at Arsenal, partly because Bukayo Saka is the one in front of him, and it's just not going to happen.
Well, right,
but
yeah.
even then, and he's a decent player. He deserves a chance to run out and get some time. So, Smith Rowe does a good job helping to create the first goal that Odegaard finishes. And then, Reece Nelson's run there, I think, really helps establish that second goal. It's 2-0 at the half.
Yeah.
And then really the second half, there's really just not a whole lot happened in the second half. It was...
Well, yeah. I mean, so my recollection was actually really them in the first half. You would almost, to my eyes, not even know that they were so heavily rotated. They were as coordinated as ever. Their passes were on point. They were moving the ball fluidly the entire time. I felt like it was overall just a strong performance from them. That they did lead, they did kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit in the second half. That was overall like they built up their lead. They did get it in just before the halftime break, and then they kind of coasted a little bit more than I would have liked to see the rest of the match.
Yeah, but I think especially coming after the City game, like they did.
Yeah.
And look, there's a level of that intensity in Arteta wants the intensity, wants you need to play that way all the time. I mean, especially at this point of the season, Like we're hitting a vein of form. We are on form right now, and frankly, we have been for our vein of form is all of 2024 right now. We've lost 2 games this calendar year.
Right,
it was the FA Cup to Liverpool, and then the first leg of the Porto tie in the
nothing
League.
In the league, right? Just one draw.
Yeah, in fact, actually, even the only dropped points in the league was that draw against City last week. So in that sense. And we can talk about the possession and scoring goals, and that's great. And that run where we were winning 4-0, 6-0, 5-0 was awesome. But to go up 2-0 and essentially just not give anything away, that they completely seized control of the game. There was nothing for Luton to do, it was kind of a boring game. But at this stage of the season, I like boring. I mean, Compared to last season when we had a lot of close late winners, and those are fun. Bournemouth that Bournemouth game, right? With when Reece Nelson's goal is a moment you as a fan will never forget. But you can't keep doing that. And the point that we are now, we have scored the most goals. We've conceded the fewest goals. We are top of the table. As we'll get to a little bit later. By many of the advanced metrics, like expected goals, we're the best team in the league. This is happening. This is what a real championship quality team, especially these days. We've talked about sort of the way City, but also Liverpool as well, raise the level of what it takes. And will these 3 teams go, never drop any points the rest of the season? I mean, probably not. It just seems so difficult, but here we are. Here we are. And, we talk about Luton as Luton potentially a troublesome game, not so much because of Luton, but because of where it came in the schedule. And then, of course, you have, the weekend's game, which I know we'll talk more about in a little bit. Brighton. That is not an easy place to go. That is a team that has given us trouble in recent years since they've been up. So, to continue to play this way, it says a lot about who we are as a club right now. We're just good. We're just good.
Yeah. Yeah, so a few questions for this match in particular. So, first of all, the commentators made mention of this, and it's something that after they pointed it out, I noticed it in the Luton match and also at the Brighton match. The players have been having to run and retrieve balls themselves more often than I've seen before in the Premier League and in other competitions. They mentioned that due to new regulations or something, there are fewer ball providers. And that seems at odds with other Premier League decisions about, okay, the player must exit at the nearest side of the pitch and, more time wasting yellow cards and stuff like that. Are they trying to keep the game moving or not?
So what was before was you'd have the ball kids, we say ball boys, but the kids who were there. The problem you run into, and this has been kind of an open secret for a while, is the way teams would use the ball boys to manipulate what was happening.
Okay,
so they would talk. So there are instances, especially in some big games, you hear it talked about afterwards, where like a City likes to play fast, and so you'd see Pep Guardiola would say like, when you get the ball, you throw it to one of our guys. Like if the ball goes out and it's a throw in, we get it in as quickly as possible. So there's this sense of using the ball to help speed up the game. Counterpoint, you would see not so much that they would be like hoarding it and not giving it, but a little slow, just a little slower,
more leisurely. Yeah.
Or even sometimes you'll see cases of, we've seen like the ball goes onto the field and it's 2 ball kids, maybe on purpose, but in a lot of cases probably not. Both of them saying, "Oh, I'm closest, so I throw the ball to the guy. He's there, he catches one, and the other one just rolls onto the field, and now we're wasting time that way."
Yeah, I have seen that happen. That's right, yeah.
What they're doing is more what you'll see in MLS, where the balls are set up on, I know New York City does this, and I think other clubs do it, the other MLS teams do it too. The ball is basically set up on those little cones around the field, and so when it goes out, you don't chase down the ball that went out, you just run to the cone, grab that ball.
Right. The nearest stationary target, right?
Right. So they're removing that human element from it. And that way, if there is any time wasted, it comes from the players themselves, Point. thinking, step forward, get pushed, told to go back, or like all that. That's the stuff you get rid of. Now the ball's in his hand. At least that way, it's the players that are delaying and not anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see what you're saying there. Like it feels counterintuitive, but actually, in some ways, it may actually speed things up.
Well, it at least keeps it even for the home team and the away team, I guess, is probably the intended effect. So, okay, I'll buy that. Yeah.
There's that element too.
So one kind of funny thing that occurred to me. So for Odegaard's goal, the first goal of this match, he passed it to Havertz, who then passed it back to him, and he scored. When they're tracking secondary assists, does he get the secondary assist on that goal, even though he ended up scoring the goal, or do they give that to Smith Rowe, who passed it to Odegaard? Like, do you know how that works?
No, he does not get an assist for that. So,
okay.
Yeah, they call it the hockey assist, and even in hockey, that doesn't work if you get two guys with a give and go. It's the goals. There's the goal scorer.
Right.
The player passes him is the primary assist, and then if in the case of hockey, there's a third player, that's the secondary assist. You cannot assist your own goal. Okay. So yeah, no, that does not. He does not get an assist for that either. If it's a give and go like that, he gets the goal, and that's enough.
Yeah. All right. One thing that I thought was interesting, because I just don't remember ever seeing this in any sport before, is there was a player for Luton whose name on his jersey and what the commentators referred to him as was Townsend Senior, which I know obviously like Ken Griffey Jr. is the first example that comes to mind, but like I've heard of juniors in the sport all the time, and most of the time that I'm aware of, their fathers would have played, years prior in that same sport typically. I'm trying to think, like, he didn't look like an old enough guy to have a grown kid playing in the Premier League at this point in time. Like, that didn't seem likely. So I don't know if it's aspirational, like if he's hoping to have a kid and he's getting it in already that he's Townsend Senior. Like, that just seemed kind of funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he has a son, Andros Jr., and so that's a conscious choice. I believe I just looked up the son's 4, so
exactly, sure, that's what I would have figured.
Right. I mean, you'll see. I've increasingly seen that more than once. As a player, I feel like recent years, a player with a senior on the back, and you just think you. Old and but like, well, they are enough. They are old enough, and that's a child is just very young. But you're right, not quite the.
Well, not old enough to be playing professionally, and not to have it like a kid who's playing professionally.
Yeah, not the Ken Griffey setup. No, absolutely. Yeah. But yes, apparently he has started to do that, which I suppose is a nice thing. For Andros Jr.
Yeah, it's just interesting. So, are you thirsty at all?
Yes, I am. I talk so much, so.
So I've got just the thing for you. Longtime viewers and listeners will know this, but we've been helped out a lot by Liquid IV, who is, of course, the category-winning hydration brand fueling your well-being. And their hydration multiplier is the one product you're missing in your daily routine. In just one stick, you get 5 essential vitamins and 2 times faster hydration than with water alone. Use it first thing in the morning, before a workout, when you feel run down, after a long night out, and on long flights. 1 stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water, which, as I've described before, a stick, it's kind of a stick-shaped packet. You tear open and it has powder in it, you pour it into water. That will hydrate you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone, and it is always made with premium ingredients. I love it. It's convenient to take with me. I love that it has no aftertaste. It always leaves my mouth feeling fresh, and I love the strawberry lemonade flavor. So I've got a new one I'll be trying out in the next couple weeks as soccer and baseball season kicks off, and I'm going to be active coaching. But if that sounds good to you and it has a place in your life, you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code Gooner at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code Gooner at liquidiv.com. There's also a link in our show notes or description to make it easier. So, Brighton.
Yes. Now, we should open with a confession on my part. For professional reasons, I was in San Antonio this weekend, not related to the eclipse at all. But as a result of my professional obligations, I was unable to see any of this game. So we're going to reverse this a little bit and see if the student can become the teacher. Brighton 0, Arsenal 3. Good win at the Amex. I love, by the way, there's a teams whose stadium is named after American Express, of all things.
Yeah.
But enough of that. Was it a 3-0 win? Is 3-0 reflective of the game you saw?
I would say yes, overall. What it doesn't take into account is how strong Brighton were before the penalty kick. Once we put them on their back foot, they understandably drew back and the style of play changed. But until that point, it wasn't an easy match before that. We did have opportunities. Jesus in particular had a couple good attempts. And of course, he was the one who was fouled in the box that turned into the penalty that Saka converted. So no, it was a strong outing for the first third. But then once we got the penalty kick, things went downhill from them. For there, we were strong throughout. We didn't really let up, not in the same way that I remarked on for Luton, at least. We kept the pressure on. We kept on trying. We had some substitutions that helped. Trossard came in fairly early into the second half, actually. It was just after our second goal. And I felt he made a really strong contribution to the second half, and he's the one who ended up scoring the third goal. But he was omnipresent throughout. Like he was really putting a lot of pressure and helping keep the match on their side of the pitch, on Brighton's side. So no, it was good. It was interesting for me, the circumstances under which I watched. So I heavily bribed my son last week to watch the Manchester City match. I gave him 10 Arsenal trading cards for watching that entire match, and he did barely make it through the whole time. This time, it was a little bit of bribery. I did offer him some cards. It was only 7 this time, because that's kind of my normal rate for watching the whole match. And the cards are gone now after this Brighton match, and so we've got something else on the way. So I'm not going to say, because he does occasionally watch the show, and I don't want to reveal what it is. But I told him today it's something different to look forward to. But he was more motivated by staying up late. We were watching the replay later on Saturday, and he didn't want to go to bed yet. And he watched the entire match with me, more or less, because he wanted to. I was trying to get him to go to bed after the first half. He's like, no, I want to watch the whole thing. So, okay. And, maybe he's manipulating me. Maybe I'm manipulating him. It's tough to tell in this circumstance. But it worked. We were both happy. He did watch the whole thing, and he was happy with the cards that he got. So.
And a 3-0 win.
And a 3-0 win. What can be bad? I mean, and he got to see a penalty kick, which may be his first time seeing an in-match penalty kick rather than like a highlight, where he sees just the penalty shootout or something like that.
Well, I think the penalty is a good one to sort of bring up. What did you? I've seen the replay, so I can. And obviously, I'm watching the replay. I knew what it was. I knew that's what I was watching. But was it a penalty? What do you think?
Oh yeah, no, it was a very obvious foul on Jesus. Okay. He just knocked him over. He was inside the box by about maybe, it looked like a foot or two to me. There's really no question whether he's in the penalty area. Yeah, definitely a foul.
But the defender does get the ball. Does that? And I know apparently some of the commentary made a point of mentioning that. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, what I will say is, due to watching with my son, I was not really listening to the in-game commentary as much as I typically would. The volume was down lower, and I wasn't, even when I could hear it, I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was talking with him about a lot of soccer, but also a lot of not soccer while we were watching, helping keep his interest. So no, I didn't hear what others were saying about it so much. I haven't gone back and read after the fact, but it looked clear cut enough to me. I think I may have even missed it at first, but then when I saw it on the replay, I was like, yeah, no, that definitely looks like it to me. Okay. So yeah, he got the ball, but if I'm recalling correctly, it was like a shoulder check. Like he knocked him over aggressively, in the process of trying to get the ball. So.
It's definitely a hard challenge, and it's interesting because the post game, the Roberto De Zerbi, who was the Brighton manager, who has said some critical things about the referees already this season. I think he was the one who said something along the lines of, I don't like 80% of them or something like that. And he apparently post game said, no, it was a penalty. And he's going to say it. Well, that kind of. But yeah, it did. It's certainly obviously. I watched the replay knowing that it was called a penalty, so I can't claim
Right.
any degree of impartiality there. But I sort of get the idea of the contact with the ball, and maybe that makes it not. But you can't do that kind of thing, and that's penalty, or point to the spot penalty.
A few minutes after that, one thing that was a really nice play by Ben White that I wanted to call out was the ball was about to go over the byline, kicked by an Arsenal player. Ben White hauled butt over there, and not only did he manage to keep it in, right? He kept it in and simultaneously turned it into a cross that I think got headed toward the goal. And I think, if I'm remembering right, the keeper pushed it up and over the crossbar or something. So he turned a corner kick into a goal kick into a corner kick, but not in the typical way where you just like knock it off of the nearest player's shin or something like that.
Created an opportunity.
Yeah, like a very credible opportunity for him. That was a really amazing play that impressed me a lot.
He's been very quiet. I mean, I shouldn't say quietly because we've talked about already. He's been playing very well. He had a couple of moments in the Luton game I could have mentioned, where normally we see Odegaard pull that kind of trickery, but all of a sudden he does it, and the kind where that can get chopped up into clips on YouTube or passed on social media, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, did you see it?" Great, Ben White just stole his soul, that kind of thing. A few of those that you almost had a double take was like, is that Ben White who did that?
Yeah.
So it's nice to see he's becoming cheekier and cheekier as we go along, which I suppose is the appropriate thing. I want to follow up on a point you mentioned. You said when Trossard came on, it felt like I think you had said, and perhaps I'm reading into this, but Jesus came off a little earlier than you expected. Is that something you had said, or?
Well, yeah, I guess I had remarked on how early in the second half Trossard was brought on. That was what I specifically noticed.
Okay.
Not from that point of view, not that Jesus was brought off early. I mean, he'd had a bunch of chances at that point. Like, he'd taken a bunch of shots. They were mostly good. There were a few rollers that went just wide of the crossbar. I think he had a header that almost went in. Like, overall, he was performing well. I can only guess at why they did take him off at that point. I think it was just that it was right after we'd scored our second goal. The result wasn't as much in question, and they brought on Saka they took off Saka and Jesus, brought on Martinelli and Trossard, which, seeing them playing at the same time, because very often Trossard is brought on for Martinelli. We're seeing them playing at the same time more often now, and I think that they make a good pair. I think that's it's interesting the way that their play develops with Martinelli playing kind of more rightward.
I mean, the big one, just looking at that is with Jesus and Saka coming off. I mean, of course, as we'll talk about in a little bit, we have Champions League on Tuesday.
Sure.
Jesus,
that could easily be
Jesus in particular is a Champions League player. So I think that was part of it. And again, we've talked about the idea of rotating players, and to be able to put on, because Martinelli and Trossard finished the City game. So for them to continue to get that time, and just to increasingly show their versatility, I think is a really nice thing as well. And then, obviously it ends with Trossard finishing off the breakaway 3-0, and then not celebrating because, of course, we signed him last season from Brighton. So
right. Yeah. I mean, one thing that was interesting, it's funny. I'm looking for. I could have sworn I made a note about this somewhere, and I'm not seeing it in our documents. So I'll go from memory, but I saw somewhere that they were talking about. Oh yeah, here it is. So they mentioned this during the Luton match that. So this is when they brought off. Havertz and Partey and brought on Nketiah and Rice, and they mentioned that Arteta had said something in like a pre-match interview or something about these being impact players, not substitutes. And, it seems like it's just kind of like PR speak or something, like it's just a euphemism. But no, I mean, I believe what he's saying. Like, we don't have lesser players we're bringing on for better players. We have a deep bench, and there are players who we bring on because they'll change the game up in some specific way. Sometimes it's just you want Martinelli with fresh legs to be able to, run at them as much as possible or whatever it is. We have really good players we bring on instead of other really good players. So they are, technically speaking, they're substitutes. They're substitutions. They are substitutes, but that's not, I guess, the way other teams might look at it.
Yeah, I did see that note there, and I'm glad you came back and brought that up. So, I mean, The short version is there's been a sea change in recent years. I mean, for years, you had your starting 11 and they played and they came off because they were hurt or because your tactics were a mess and you needed to do something crazy to change things up. Increasingly, because of fixture congestion and especially for some teams, the depth of their bench, and you've seen a lot more of the injuries. You've seen the idea of the rotation, or then after COVID we have 5 substitutes as opposed to 3.
Mm-hmm.
You've never lived in the world of 3 substitutes.
Right,
a totally different way of thinking about it. And Arteta has talked about this, and I know other managers have as well. They almost say we don't have starters and substitutes. We have starters and we have closers. They're the guys who come in to close the game. And the idea is look, ideally, yes, you start and you play 90 minutes. That's what everybody wants. They want to be on the field as much as possible. But guys who are able to say, look, just because you are on the bench, you're coming off the bench, you are still playing a very important role, especially in the context of where we are this season. Now, who knows if Arsenal wins a title or wins a trophy this year? And again, this is purely hypothetical. But if they do, you're one of those guys who's coming off the bench. You say to yourself, all right, I had my time off the bench. I won my trophy. Now I want to go somewhere where I'm the guy. Mm-hmm. You see that sort of thing a lot. They're willing to subsume short term for the team goals and the long term, parlay that into something bigger for themselves. The negative side of this was, Pat Riley, who was the longtime NBA coach and executive when he was with the Lakers, when he was first winning titles with Magic Johnson and Showtime, called it the disease of more. That once you win, everybody wants more, and more time, more stats, more opportunities. But before you get there, it's very easy to get people in those roles, and I think that's what Arteta's talking about. No, they aren't substitutes in the way we always talked about substitutes. As you said very well, the lesser players. These guys they are coming on to make an impact. I expect them, and part of that's the message to them too is that challenge. I expect you to do something when you're on the field. You're not just there to run around for 20 minutes or however long you're out there. You're there to make something happen.
And it's clear. It's clear that he's telling them that because we see that every match. It's always the freshest players in the second half that are immediately shooting, stealing the ball. We see this. I see it every match. Whoever they bring in does have an immediate impact, and not always a result from it, but it does always have an impact on the match.
And some of that, again, is that idea of change, right? Traditionally, the substitute, your first priority was don't screw up what we've been doing. And so they'll sometimes play more conservatively, especially if they're like for like, and maybe the game is played in a different part of the field than where they are. But the idea is Arteta's putting you on, I have something I want you to do. And we go back to that notion, and this was a criticism of him early on, especially in the COVID period when there's nobody in the stands and everybody could hear what he was shouting at the players. He exerted a very tight control, had a very clear vision of how they were supposed to play. And it was a criticism that sometimes it was too much control. It was micromanaging. It was a little too predictable. But there is a sense that even now, when he puts a player on, you're being on for a reason. There's something I need you to do. And, I heard some of this commentary, listening to some post-game stuff about Havertz, that at the start of the season, we he's not scoring, Havertz is struggling, this and that, but Arteta sort of said, no, he's doing what I want him to do. Everything else will fall into place, and now we're seeing that fall into place. Of course, he got another goal here, so that idea again. Sometimes it gets used as a way to short-circuit conversations where you're not in the locker room. You don't know what they're being told. And okay, but that doesn't mean they can't make a bad decision. But a manager can't make a bad decision. But sometimes it really is. There's something he's asked them to do. And when he sits here and is critical of a player afterwards, because they told you to do this and you didn't do it. Yes, you scored a goal, but that wasn't – you did it by doing something I told you not to do.
Right.
So it's an interesting way, again, sort of the reconsideration of roles and what players are expected to do throughout all of this. But at the end of the day, everybody did their jobs because we went 5-0 this week.
Right. No, it's
pretty good.
Our goal difference is in good shape, and it's mattering now more than ever, huh?
Especially given we don't have a lot of time to go into this, but the big result, we talked about dropping points or not dropping points. I was able to watch a little bit of City's game with Crystal Palace on Saturday. It was earlier in the day. I mean, their City, they looked pretty good, but they gave up 2 goals. And then Liverpool, of course, not only did they concede 2 goals, at least City scored 4. Liverpool only scored 2. They dominated Manchester United, but wasted many opportunities, gave up 2 really bad ones the other way. And even though that they're a deeply mediocre club this year, United steals a point at Old Trafford from Liverpool, and we are top of the table right now.
Yeah.
We control our destiny, which is it's frightening in a good way, but
I mean, this is the first time in a while that we've been top of the table while even on matches played, right?
Yeah, there was that stretch, of course, when we were ahead of City for a good point. They had a few games in hand. Now, right. Even if we were still at a point, so our lead was large enough that even if I had won those games, we would have still been ahead. But in terms of where the title was really won/lost, it was when we started to drop points in the later stages of the season. Especially that stretch after Saliba went out, we had a couple of those the stretches where we lost game, dropped a couple points, dropped to draws, and then lost a few games we really shouldn't have, and so finished in second. But we're in the pole position. I mean, the phrase in sports is always control your own destiny, which that's not really how destiny works. That's the whole point. You can't control it. But the idea is that if we win, there is nothing Liverpool or City can do. If we win, we are on top. And that's where so as long as we take care of business, and that's kind of what I've been trying to preach, at least to myself in the last few weeks. As fun it is to scoreboard watch and look at the other games and say, oh, is City doing, might they drop? Oh, Liverpool dropped it. Win your game. We win our games. Everything else will take care of itself. And if we don't win the title, we win out and somehow don't win the title because Liverpool just went ballistic and started to win games by 4 or 5 goals like we did, and ends us blowing a goal difference. I mean, what do you say? You tip your cap and just
At
some point you just get beat. Sometimes you just get beaten by a better team. But right now we're the better team. Yeah. We're the better team, and just with a little month and a half to go. We have 9 games left, counting Champions League, potentially 12 games, depending on how the Champions League plays out. We are well and truly in the stretch run now, or well and truly in the end game.
Yeah. All right. So, bearing in mind that you didn't watch the entire Brighton match, who would be your player of the week?
I was thinking about that, and for most of this, I was actually thinking to myself, it's Odegaard, pulls the strings, manages everything. I mean, he is everything. He's so good, so consistent. But because I love stealing, an extra name in there, I think we have to go with a player who's honestly playing the best overall right now, and it's Kai Havertz.
Yeah.
He is, and he has the goals to back it up. He's been playing extremely well. He's all over the place. We talked about Jesus being the Champions League specialist. I don't know that he starts against Bayern on Tuesday. I don't know how you don't have Kai Havertz at the 9. I say that Arteta's got a plan, and he's going to roll out. It's going to be Jesus, and Havertz is back in the midfield with Odegaard, Declan Rice, and Thomas Partey's going to be right back, and somehow Ben White's going to play the right wing the whole game. I don't know, but Havertz has been fantastic. I got to go with our big awkward German. I said with love, our 60 million man down the drain, Waka Waka.
And of course, I wonder if it's an advantage or not having our German player play against the German team next week. So I guess I don't know if that's a factor or not, but yeah. That's a good pick. No, he's had a very noticeable impact across the season, and it's been a joy to watch him kind of start to feel more comfortable and really fall into a rhythm with the club. So it's been good. the Luton match is like almost completely faded from memory. And I guess that's just a comment on the overall match. And it was also longer ago. It's just been almost a week now. But I didn't really have any strong thoughts on. I mean, if I had to pick from that match, I do think Odegaard probably would have been it. But maybe it's recency bias. Maybe it's just because I feel like he's overdue because I haven't called him out in my memory like super recently. It has been a while, but Trossard had a really strong performance in that final third of the Brighton match. He's just been amazing. He's been such a pleasure to watch last season and this season, just doing great things. And I like that they're starting to use him in different ways. He's been a starter more, even though he didn't in this match. And it's kind of like we were talking about the rotational yellow card. It's like the rotational player of the match, player of the week for him. It's like this week wasn't necessarily the best example, but I mean, you've seen the replay of that goal that he made. I mean, it was just beautiful. Like, you know, one-on-one against the goal, and he didn't mess it up. He did everything right. And he had the fresh legs to carry him all the way there at that point because he was, you know, a substitute. It was great. So I give it to him for this week.
Fair.
Meanwhile, I don't think there's time for dessert, so I think we'll have to save more shirt talk for next week. So why don't you tell me what's coming up next?
I was going to make a joke about meat and potatoes, which seems appropriate, because guess what? We're playing the Germans on Tuesday. Champions League quarterfinal, first leg at the Emirates. Arsenal, Bayern Munich. Harry Kane is back. Although this time with Bayern. This is, you know, I've alluded to this in the past, and I sent you something as well. Well, you know, I know it'll be there in the notes. A piece from the Athletic today about the last time Arsenal was in the Champions League, they were drubbed by Bayern Munich. The last three meetings against Bayern all finished 5-1 to the Germans. A group stage game in 2016, and then in 2017 they played in the last 16 and lost both legs 5-1. Really that was the last time Arsenal was in the Champions League before the season. Really sort of emblematic of where Arsenal was relative to the elite of Europe. Look, Bayern has been struggling this season by their lofty standards. They have been knocked out of the German Cup. They're effectively knocked out of the title race. It really is only a question of when does Leverkusen clinch the title in Germany. For Bayern, the only thing left for them is the Champions League. Now, they are talented enough to win it. But it says a lot that in spite of all of that, we're arguably the favorites. You know, the skill level we've got, the depth we have. Bayern will not be easy, but it'll be a different game than Porto. They can do some of the things Porto did, like clogging the midfield, but they're not going to play in a low block. Bayern doesn't play that way. They don't play anybody that way. So this is going to be a game where if we are on our horse, we can be open, we can pass, we can move, and so will they. And it'll be definitely a test of our defense to hold them, and then really, I think take our opportunities and get a big lead, as big a lead as or any lead really. Let's win. I mean, this is a game I think we need to win before to head to Munich next week. But boy, this is this is what the Champions League is for, is to play Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals. This is why you're here, and so get your Paramount Plus ready, because it's Bayern, it's Arsenal at the Arsenal Stadium. We can't call the Emirates for sponsorship reasons during the Champions League games, but it's
we can.
And then because by the way, after that, however that plays out. Like we talk about Luton the City, we got to get our minds right. Sunday at home against Aston Villa.
Right.
That is not going to be an easy game. That is a game against a team. You know, we saw Liverpool slip up against United. There are banana peels left on all of our schedules, particularly ours. Villa is one of them. You know, we still have Chelsea, United, Spurs. We have some dangerous games left. Sunday at home against Villa, they have to be physically. I'm not worried. We talk about the depth of the team, but they have to be mentally ready And that game, for us at least here in America, will be on USA. I don't know who's televising it in the rest of the world, and but you'll figure it out. That'll be Sunday at home against Villa. And sandwiched right between both legs of the Bayern. So it is about to be a very big week for Arsenal. The next about 10 days from now are going to tell us a lot. Are going to tell us a lot about how our season is going to continue to play out. So can't wait. Can't wait.
Drubbed. That isn't something. Is that similar to trounced? Is it?
Yeah, trounced blew out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, not cool, but new vocabulary is always cool.
Yeah. Trust me, I watched those games. It was not cool. It was not cool at all.
Well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube. There's a link in the show notes to take you there. Wherever you watch or listen, join other smart and considerate listeners like yourself and like, subscribe, rate, or review, or share the show. Thanks again to our sponsor, Liquid IV. Find us on Twitter to get updates and ask questions. Check out our description and links to everything we talk about, our sponsor and our Twitter pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
The champions!